Ludwik I the Fair or Louis I the Fair, also known as the Wise, the Right, or of Brzeg, was a Duke of Legnica 2 times. First during 1342 to 1345, and secondly during 1345 to 1346, and Duke of Brzeg from 1358. Also, he was regent of Legnica during 1364 to 1373. He was the second son of Bolesław III the Generous, Duke of Legnica-Brzeg, by his first wife Margaret of Bohemia, daughter of King Wenceslaus II. Louis was the youngest son of the ducal couple who survived adulthood. The third and last son, Nicolaus, was born and died in 1322, shortly before the mother. Like his older brother, little was known of Louis I's early years. His first formal appearance was in 1329 on the occasion of the renewal of his father's homage to King John of Bohemia. In the following years, Louis spent much of his time in the royal court of Prague. It was where he probably learned about politics and government. In 1342, Bolesław I's huge debts forced him to give the Duchy of Legnica to his sons Louis I and Wenceslaus I, and he retired with his second wife Katharina Subik to the Duchy of Brzeg. During the first 3 years, both brothers ruled jointly without major problems until Wenceslaus I, after years of childless marriage, lost all his hopes to have children and decided to give most of the Legnica territory to Louis. The formal divisionary treaty took place on the 9th of August 1345 in Wrocław and was personally signed by King John of Bohemia. Louis I received the richest part of the duchy and the capital, Legnica. However, the breakdown between the brothers took place only 1 year later. In 1346, Wenceslaus I, whose wife, after 8 years of marriage, was finally expecting the first child, tried to modify the treaty, under which Louis I gave up all his lands to Wenceslaus I, and in exchange, he was named his sole heir, even in the case of the birth of a son. As a temporary compensation, Louis I received 400 pieces of silver per year and the possession of the Palace of Bycina. It soon became apparent the reality was totally different. The ill Wenceslaus wasn't in any danger of dying. In addition, the situation was more complicated after the birth of the first of Wenceslaus's 4 sons, Rupert. Now Wenceslaus I wanted to force his brother to renounce his succession rights, and Louis I saw how his brother reduced the payment of his allowance. However, Louis's financial situation was not so bad, as he was able to buy the city of Lublin from his father and moved there with his family. Between 1349 and 1350, Louis took part in a pilgrimage to Rome. After the death of his father Bolesław III, Louis I opted for a military solution to the conflicts with his brother. The war lasted for nearly 6 years. The final agreement concluded between the brothers was signed on the 23rd of July 1359. The winner in the conflict was Louis I, who, in addition to the confirmation of his government over Lublin, obtained from Wenceslaus I the town of Chownów, the half of Olawa, the Duchy of Brzeg, and a monetary compensation of 4,500 pieces of silver. For his part, Louis promised to pay half of his late father's debts and formally renounced all claim over the Duchy of Legnica. Wenceslaus I died on the 2nd of June 1364, leaving 4 underage sons. Louis I took the regency on behalf of his nephews until 1373. For the beginning of his regency, he made significant efforts to save the Legnica treasury and to eliminate the spectre of bankruptcy. His talent in government affairs caused Louis I to be actively involved in the rule of Legnica by the request of his eldest nephew Rupert I, who followed most of his advice. Thanks to the great improvement of the Legnica finances. Louis I was able to retake the half of the Duchy of Brzeg lost by his late brother, and also acquired the towns of Kluczbork, Byczyna, Wolcin and Niemcia, in order to maintain his sole authority over his lands, despite the attainment of majority of his eldest son Henry VII. Louis I didn't give him a separate state, and only named him co-regent but without any real power in 1360–1361. Henry VII received his own district only in 1395, Niemcia, purchased by his father 3 years before. Louis I participated actively in foreign politics. On the 21st of May 1379, with his brother Wenceslaus I, he renewed his homage to King Wenceslaus IV. In exchange, the king promised the succession to the whole Duchy of Legnica-Brzeg only to the descendants of Bolesław III the Generous from then on, which saved this line of the House of Pist from further intrusions by the relatives. A second renewal of homage took place on the 6th of January 1383, but this time Louis I had to renounce any claims over the duchies whose current holders were relatives of the King of Bohemia, Wrocław, Schweidnitz and Juror. On the 12th of June 1397, Louis took part in the Congress of Lubny-Kark, at which were present, among others, King Władysław II Jagiello and Przemysław I, Duke of Szczecin. The dynastic politics of Louis I had also a good result. He managed to orchestrate the marriages of his oldest daughter Margaret to Albert I of Bavaria, son of Emperor Louis IV, and his only son Henry VII to Margaret of Masovia, widow of Casimir IV, Duke of Pomerania. Also he arranged the marriage of his nephew Rupert I to Hedwig of Agen, widow of King Casimir III the Great. Louis I expected that with these marriages he would have additional arguments to fight for the Polish throne after the death of King Casimir III. Very quickly it became clear that the prospects for the throne of Krakow were very distant. Finally, in 1396 he made an alliance with the new ruler of Poland, Władysław II Jagiello, against Władysław Opolczyk. The reputation of the Duke of Brzeg was so great that Louis I had been repeatedly appointed by Charles IV and Wenceslaus IV as a mediator in disputes. Louis I, during his long government, was known as a founder of a number of laic and religious buildings. At this time the Codex Lubinsky was also made, which illustrated the life of his great-great-great-grandmother St. Hedwig of Andechs, whose cult he promoted throughout all his reign. Louis I died between 6 and 23 December 1398 and was buried in the Collegiata of St. Hedwig in Brzeg. Marriage and issue. Around 1341, Louis married Agnes, daughter of Duke Henry IV of Glogau-Agen and widow of Duke Leszek of Raciborz. They had 6 children. Margaret married after the 19th of July 1353 to Albert I, Duke of Bavaria. Henry VII with the Scar. Catherine, Abbess of Trebnitz. Hedwig married California, 1366 to Jan II, Duke of Oswiecim. Wenceslaus, a daughter,